Anxiety is part of life to a certain degree, but it can also be debilitating if we relate to it in a way that exaggerates it. In this video, you will learn about fear-based thinking, thoughts typical for the anxious mind, and how we can change them so that anxiety stays within the range of what is helpful. Hey everyone, and welcome to Becoming an Expert at Self-Leadership. I'm Maika, a psychologist, and my calling is to share thoughts, insights, information, and discoveries from psychology that support you in your self-leadership so you can become an expert at taking care of and guiding yourself. One way in which we guide ourselves is how we cope with and respond to anxiety and fear-based thinking. Some of the strategies that we use are helpful, while others will most likely increase our anxiety in the future. In this video, I will explain thoughts that are typical for the anxious part of our mind and how we can respond to them so that we can befriend our anxious mind and not unnecessarily increase our anxiousness. I'm surrounded by danger. The anxious mind overestimates the degree of danger we're in. To the anxious mind, the danger we face on a day-to-day basis is bigger than the safety that we're in. The consequence of this is that we become anxious in situations that are not objectively dangerous, and our anxiety increases in its intensity. Situations that are very common for people to feel anxious in are speaking up in a meeting, taking an exam, setting a boundary with someone, seeing your child or a child you're taking care of play on the playground, traveling to new places, meeting new people, taking in the view on a viewing platform, seeing a spider or snake, or being surrounded by darkness. On principle, there's nothing wrong with our mind for having a part that makes sure we're aware of and stay away from factual danger. That's helpful. What is debilitating is if it becomes so exaggerated that it keeps us from living our life fully. And to transform these anxious thoughts of I'm surrounded by danger, we can start making realistic risk evaluations. You can do this by asking yourself questions like, how likely is this to happen? What's my impression of this danger based on? Is it based on facts or on a negatively distorted way of seeing the situation? Is my impression that this is dangerous based perhaps simply on the fact that I'm feeling anxious? What's the worst case scenario for the situation that I'm feeling anxious about, and how bad would that actually be? Number two, I can't let my guard down. The anxious mind is in a constant state of alertness. Since it believes that it's surrounded by danger, it starts scanning the situation for signs of that danger unfolding so it can prepare and prevent that danger from getting the better of us. This constant scanning, this hyper alertness, makes us irritable and tense. And the first step here is to become aware of what it is you are scanning for. This has to do with the specific anxiety that we're dealing with. Someone who is socially anxious, for example, scans other people's faces for signs of disapproval. We might also be scanning the news for any dangerous report. And the thing is, the more we scan for something, the more we look for something, the more we will find it. And that contributes to this distorted picture of reality that the anxious mind creates. The more I look for signs of disapproval on other people's faces, the more I will find them. And surveys show that people who watch more TV consistently overestimate how violent the world is. So become aware of what it is you're scanning for And then whenever you notice that you're starting to scan for that again, shift your attention onto cues for safety. For the social anxiety, that could be facial expressions that express appreciation and approval, or that express that someone is not thinking about you, not judging you at all. And another way we can work on this hyper alertness that the anxious mind creates is with grounding exercises that activate the parasympathetic nervous system, and with relaxation techniques like progressive muscle relaxation. Number 3, I need certainty. The anxious mind is not at all comfortable with uncertainty. It wants to know for certain what will happen, and it wants to know right now. In one study, it was found that the participants were more stressed by not knowing whether they would receive an electric shock than if they knew it was definitely coming. The uncertainty about an electric shock was more stressful than a definite shock. And while that is the way our brains work, uncertainty is part of life. So here are 2 thoughts that can help you cope with that, thoughts you can remind yourself of whenever the anxious part of your mind starts speaking up about being uncomfortable with uncertainty. Thought number 1, just because something could happen doesn't mean it is likely to. There are worst case scenarios for every situation, for everyone. But the chance that things will go well is a lot bigger. And we can calm our anxious mind when we look for all of the signs and reasons that things will go well. So just because something is uncertain doesn't mean it will have a negative outcome. And thought number 2 is that while we struggle with uncertainty in specific areas of our life, there are other areas in which we've already accepted uncertainty. And what you can do is transfer that acceptance onto the situations that you're uncomfortable with. For example, whenever you travel, participate in traffic, eat at a restaurant, or start a conversation with someone you don't know. Those are all situations in which we've accepted uncertainty. And we can bring that same kind of acceptance for uncertainty into the situations that we're still struggling with. Number 4, I must be in control. This is another aspect of life the anxious mind has trouble accepting, the fact that we're not always in control. So instead of accepting that, the anxious mind tries to gain control by trying to control situations that we actually can't control, or we can only control with a huge amount of effort that stands in the way of living a full life. The anxious mind will try to convince you to check again and again to see that everything's okay, to pay more attention, to try harder, to make sure everything will be fine. And what the anxious mind needs to learn is to observe and accept that we can't always be in control, and that might also cause some anxiety to come up, and to observe and accept that and let it go, let it pass through you without needing to act on it and without feeling uncomfortable about that discomfort. These thoughts that come from the anxious mind, they're thoughts, they're not objective reality. They're a false alarm. And we can't erase the anxious part of our mind, but we can learn to see these thoughts as thoughts and to know when it's a false alarm that we don't have to act on or increase our discomfort by adding judgment to that experience. That's a nice segue into the last typical thought of the anxious mind. Number 5, I need to avoid feeling anxious. The anxious part of our brain is not only anxious about uncertainty, unlikely threats, and being out of control, but also about anxiety itself. It's convinced that we need to do everything we can to avoid feeling discomfort or anxiety. Avoiding situations that make us anxious takes away the opportunity to learn that actually that situation wasn't that dangerous. So the only thing the brain can register is that, oh, it seems like this was dangerous, and the only way we survived it was by avoiding this situation, so we should definitely avoid it in the future too. The only way we can teach our brain to not feel anxious about something is if we are willing to gently stretch our comfort zone and do things even if they make us feel anxious at first. And also to be accepting of anxiety when it comes up. Anxiety is natural, it's human. It shows that you're being courageous and doing something outside of your comfort zone. Thanks for joining me on this journey to the anxious part of our mind, to get to know it better so that we can respond to it in a way that's helpful. If you're new here and you'd like to see more videos like this, and you want to be certain that the algorithm will also show them to you, then hit the subscribe button and notification bell. Till next time, take care, and remember to befriend your anxious mind so that you can work towards your goals together.